Next, I would like to invite Dr. Rohan sir, who will be teaching us on central serous choroidal retinopathy. And may I request Dr. Manisha Nada ma'am to introduce sir?
Good evening, all. I introduced Dr. Rohan Chawla. He is working as associate professor in AIMS and has done FRCS, and also he has done 3 years fellowship from All India Institute and is a phenomenal speaker. And I would request him to now come with his thoughts on CSER. Dr. Rohan, over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. And thank you, Dr. Khanduja, for inviting me to this webinar.
Yeah, Rajesh, I think you'll have to switch off your screen share.
Very nice videos, Rajesh. It was a treat watching your surgery. Definitely.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you.
Okay. I will go on to share my screen. Okay. Can you see the screen now?
Yes, sir. So you're audible and your screen is visible.
Okay. So I'll be talking on central serous chorioretinopathy. So from CSR, it is now CSCR, because now choroid is thought to play a major role in the pathology. So just to give you an idea of a typical patient, is a young male, might have anxious personality with some mild to moderate blurring and complaining of a central black patch in the field of vision or metamorphopsia. So if a patient walks with just these four things into my OPD, a young patient, I think the first thing that should come to your mind is this diagnosis. And in many cases, just seeing the neurosensory detachment, the diagnosis is fairly easy to make. But these are typical cases. And these are typical angiographic features where you find the ink blot leak or a smokestack type of leak. ICG has recently showed us increased fluorescence of the choroidal vasculature, and OCT definitely confirming the diagnosis. But as I said, this is a typical patient. Now I'll be showing you situations where it is looks like CSR, but it may be something else, and also some atypical types of CSR. So just to go into the pathophysiology, the recent thought process probably is that there is an increased flow through the medium and large choroidal vessels and overlying thinning of the choriocapillaries, which is also referred to as probably a pachychoroid type of situation. And finally there is a micro rip in the RP, which leads to this fluid seeping it into the subretinal space. There is no rip, there might just be an isolated PED. This is one of the proposed hypotheses, but most commonly observed. So this is a standard case where probably where I marked the arrows, you see that there is a fluid like bulla here, where the retina is losing its transparency. You do an OCT, you get the subretinal fluid and your diagnosis is confirmed. You do an angiography and you get your typical leak. But now let us see this case. So here again, where I have marked with the arrows, you feel as if there is just fluid there. And this case was in fact referred to us as CSR, because someone had done this OCT and they found that there is subretinal fluid. But it is important to look at all the sections of the OCT. Then someone else looked at this section and then came up with a diagnosis of optic nerve head pit, which is leaking fluid under the retina and into the retina. So it may be an optic nerve head pit maculopathy. But when you look at it more carefully, and we also performed an OCT angiography, you look, there is a yellowish lesion here, and look, the OCT angiography is showing that that area is forming a choroidal neovascular membrane. This is actually a case of idiopathic choroidal neovascular membrane. We gave him anti-VEGF and this OCT, and it's just after about 3-4 days of the injection, it's already started showing resolution of the fluid. So one has to be a little careful. One should look at additional findings apart from the fluid when analyzing cases of CSR. Now this is a case which shows a pigment epithelial detachment. Again, a youngish patient. So one might want to make a diagnosis of say type 2 CSR, where only PEDs exist. But what you need to see here is, I hope you can see the arrow pointer where I'm marking. So this area here, there's something,
Yes,
like a
sir.
double
Yes, sir. We
membrane.
can.
Yeah, okay. So double membrane sort of formation where there is some hyperreflectivity under the lifted RPE. So this is not to be ignored. So you can also see stippled hyperfluorescence on fluorescein angiography and probably a membrane-like structure on ICG, which we did consider to be a CNVM, and since it was extrafoveal, we treated it with just reduced fluence PDT, and we definitely got a response. So again, you can have these subtle sort of membranes in these cases of pachychoroid spectrum. So this pachychoroid spectrum is basically those thick choroid which can range from just minimal pigment epithelial changes to a CSR, to polyps, and also secondary choroidal neovascular membranes. So one has to be a little careful with these patients with the thicker choroid. So another patient where you see fluid, but along with it, there is a lot of exudation also. Although there is a tract going inferiorly, which might suggest a chronic CSC. But again, if you do a angiogram, you will see that there are not just simple CSR-like features. And OCT also shows you larger PEDs with this subretinal hyperreflective material. So again, this is probably not just CSR, and so much exudation would not come out in cases of CSR. So again, probably a case of polypoidal choroidal vasculopathy. Another example of a CSC going into PCV. So right eye, you can see the bleed. So definitely something has bled there, choroidal neovascular membrane. You see the ICG and FA, you can see some of these polyps in the right eye. In the left eye, you see just a subtle patch of granular hyper reflectivity. ICG shows increased choroidal vessels here, and some may be focal leaks. So probably this left eye is still in the CSC stage, may progress into a polypoidal choroidal vasculopathy like the right eye. Right eye has the thumb-like PED with a double layer sign, whereas left eye still just has mainly subretinal fluid with a little bit of pigment epithelial hump there. So we have to be careful about these cases where a CSC goes into a PCV. Now look at this case. This case again, you might see that there is fluid at the posterior pole, especially in the left eye. And the additional things to be noted here is look at the disc. You see the disc in the left eye, definitely the margins are not as well defined as the right eye. There seems to be a little hyperemia also there. You do an OCT, you do find your subretinal fluid, but again, you don't jump to CSC. Look at the RPE. It is also a little lumpy, bumpy. So this can happen in cases of inflammation. This can happen in cases of metastasis. So in this case, to further confirm when you do a fluorescein or an ICG, ICG typically shows you those hypopatches. So where the inflammatory cells are there in the choroid now, you are not getting dye over there, and you're not getting the increased choroidal fluorescence as you were getting in the CSC cases. So this is basically a case of Vogt-Koyanagi-Harada syndrome. Again, you see fluorescein angiography showing you a hot disc. There is even the other eye is showing a little hyperfluorescence on the disc. So VKH and CSC can be easily confused, and they must be differentiated. The VKH patients generally could show cells also in the anterior chamber and in this associated anterior uveitis, but they need to be differentiated because the treatment is exactly opposite. VKH, you have to give steroids, whereas CSC, you have to avoid the steroids. So although many times we are able to make a clinical diagnosis, but if you have a doubt, go ahead, do an ICG. That will definitely resolve your confusion. In other case, young patient with what looks like fluid at the posterior pole in both the eyes, but again, don't miss these yellow patches here. So if you do an OCT, actually, although you seem to have these fluid filled cavities, but again, this hump at the subretinal level or the level of the RP. So these cases with a symmetrical pattern, they are more likely to be actually vitelliform dystrophies. Now here actually I don't have a fluorescein autofluorescence of this patient, but fluorescein autofluorescence clinches the diagnosis because these yellowish patches definitely start showing increased autofluorescence. And if you still want to confirm, your best disease would definitely have a EOG abnormality. So vitelliform dystrophy, consider you have young patient with bilaterally symmetrical picture. So another case where in the left eye you see fluid at the posterior pole, but don't forget to look at the disc. So these cases where you have some, actually this flash has come a little more bright here, but here these are cases of optic disc pit maculopathies where apart from just the fluid, the in the subretinal space, fluid is also causing intraretinal chysis and extending on to the disc. So these optic disc cavity abnormalities, apart from disc, you can have other cavity abnormalities also, which might at first glance appear as CSC, but if you look at the disc carefully, you'll be able to diagnose these. Now look at this another case where you appear to have again this discoloration here, where the choroidal reflex is lost. So there's fluid accumulating here. And if I show you the OCT again, you will see that there is subretinal fluid, but so many hyperreflective dots here in the subretinal fluid as well as in the choroid. So is it again a case of VKH like I showed you earlier? Well, actually here we had a pre-diagnosed patient. This was a known case of leukemia. And so this is a case of leukemic retinopathy where the leukemic cells are infiltrating into the choroid and causing this exudative detachment. Now, VKH actually has also been described in CML, but this case was actually of ALL and these detachments resolved only on chemotherapy. So I'm a little hesitant to call it VKH. It is probably a direct leukemic infiltration. Another case where you see large amount of fluid at the posterior pole. If you look carefully again at the above the disc, there is a lesion there. So this fluid is coming from that leaking lesion. If you do an ultrasound, you'll realize that it is nothing but a small hemangioma, which has a very uniform reflectivity on ultrasound. So small choroidal tumors also can lead to fluid at the posterior pole. So again, not a case of CSC. Now we did photodynamic therapy for that and see this fluid at the posterior pole has now totally resolved. Little bit is remaining and the scan which is going through the tumor still shows some changes, but probably we can just follow up this patient for present. Now, this is a recently described entity called dome-shaped macula in high myopes. Here, instead of a posterior staphyloma, the sclera is somehow bending inwards. So, because of that pressure, perhaps again the pressure in the choroid increases and some fluid exudes under the retina. This is not CSC, no laser, nothing required for it. Presently, mostly people recommend a follow-up. Another example of dome-shaped macula without fluid. So you can have them with fluid or without fluid. In other case, first OCT would probably tell you if it's a young patient, you would consider CSC. But again, don't ignore these other RP abnormalities which you are seeing on the OCT. If you do a FAF, it's showing some patterns sort of dystrophy, but it is this patient was not actually a pattern dystrophy also. If you see FFA, you are not getting your typical ink blot leaks. You're not getting the typical increased hyperfluorescence on ICG. So this patient is actually a case of SLE. And so this patient has an SLE associated choroidopathy. So you see many diseases which are causing choroidopathy are going to cause exudation of fluid at the posterior pole. So these need to be differentiated. So this was a case of SLE choroidopathy. Again, in this case, I would give steroids and increase the immunosuppression rather than avoid the steroids. So this patient again was referred to us as CSR, but here you see the something which looks like a fluid-filled cavity. It is inverted. It is upwards. And actually, what this case is probably a case of Valsalva retinopathy, where the sub-ILM bleed has mostly resolved, and you can see the ILM is being separated. No subretinal fluid at all, and here some brownish material is there, some residual blood. So sub-ILM cavity, which is mimicking a fluid-filled CS. So you have to know the points which go against a diagnosis of a typical CSC. Look at the disc, look at additional deposits, take a systemic history because systemic diseases can also cause it. Fluid at the posterior pole, like I showed you. Simple hypertension can even cause fluid at the posterior pole or even exudative detachments bilateral. So, and additional findings on the OCT are important. Additional dots, additional undulations, and sometimes OCTA can be helpful in picking up CNVM membranes. So these are some things you should have to keep in mind when it's not a typical case. Now I will go to some atypical CSC manifestations. So here you see some yellowish deposit here, yellowish white. So sometimes these cases are confused with choroiditis, but there are no cells in this case. The disc is normal. You see the OCT, the RP line is very flat. Only yes, the fibrin deposit is seen. This is actually just a simple case of CSC with fibrin deposition. And you see the FA also, the leak is somewhat like an ink blot getting larger with the phases. So this is CSC with fibrin. In other case, again you see this deposits yellowish creamy under the retina and some subretinal scarring. Discs are absolutely normal, media clear, no cells. You do an angiography, again you see those multiple ink blot type leaks. And although the OCT is quite dramatic, showing you intraretinal fluid, subretinal, as well as the fibrin, which is showing hyperreflectivity. But again, just a case of multifocal CSC. So wherever it was possible, we lasered these extra foveal leaks, and although it did develop a lot of subretinal scarring and RP rip in the left eye, but still the posterior pole is now much better, and the patient did definitely gain vision. In these cases, also you must take history of steroids, because sometimes patients who are taking steroids tend to develop such large multifocal CSCs. So, like I said, even exudative detachment, the fluid is too much in amount, the whole entire retina, inferior retina might appear detached. So it can cause fibrin and exudative detachment also. Chronic CSC, sometimes you might have these pigmentary tracts, which are the telltale signs that this patient has been suffering from CSC for a very long time, and nothing else to be done for it. It's not ARMD, it's just chronic CSC management. I'm just going to come to. So how do you manage once you have made a diagnosis of CSC? So if it is acute CSC, mostly we advise observation, but till when is a bit of a question mark. Most people would not like to suffer from visual disability for months. So probably a month is what we are looking at, not more than that. So we can seriously keep looking at the OCT. We don't need to perform angiographies at all sittings. I probably only perform an angiography when I have planned that now I'm going to take up this patient for some kind of laser. So if there is an improvement, you can still continue to observe, but you can otherwise intervene somewhere around 4 to 6 weeks. So chronic CSC, some people say chronic is 3 months, some say 6 months, but on an average, for fluid is persisting for more than 4 months, it is said to be chronic. We would not like patients to develop chronic CSC, because these patients then tend to, the fluid tends to persist and intraretinal changes start occurring, and then probably we will not be able to salvage vision to a very great extent. But what can we do? So during observation, if the patient is on steroids, any form, even inhalational steroids, topical, cream, stop them, control the blood pressure, ensure that patient is having adequate sleep. Sleep apnea has been known to have a risk factor for this, and give them anxiolytics if required. So this is one of the things, and it does help in quite a few patients. As such, also acute CSC does not have a very bad natural history in more than 60% patients. But if nothing is helping, fluid is persisting, then I think of all the therapies and of all the trials, to, at present, I would say photodynamic therapy is probably the treatment of choice, because it will not lead any scotoma, and it has shown most consistent results. But to avoid the side effects of photodynamic therapy, half fluence, and even combined, we have done half fluence, half dose. Even that little bit of therapy works. And but the only thing is, yes, even after photodynamic therapy, you can have recurrences, new leaks can develop, but we can even do this for subfoveal lesions. But I've had one patient who has developed a scotoma because of a choroidal ischemia after photodynamic therapy. So since then, I never do full fluence. I always do half fluence, and even reduce the dose of vertiporphyrin while I'm doing photodynamic therapy for CSC. Now we recently got this subthreshold laser. I've tried this also. So here we just give a laser burn which is just visible, and then we reduce the duty cycle to 10%. So so much less energy is now going in, and for a very fraction of a time. And but only, I have seen that one hit doesn't help. We have to give 4 5 hits, but with this reduced energy. And we have a yellow laser which is said to be more fovea friendly, but it can even be done with a double frequency YAG. And in my hands, I think the effectivity is somewhere around 50%. It's not like PDT, but yes, cost is much less, and I am doing it for patients who can't afford PDT, and we don't have any other option. So it is said not that it doesn't damage RP as much as a focal laser. So this is one patient of where we have done subthreshold laser. Leak is quite close to the fovea, and post laser there is definitely marked reduction in fluid. So for extrafoveal leaks, definitely leaks which are away from foveal avascular zone, you can do PDT, or if you don't have PDT or it's too expensive, you can definitely go ahead and directly do a focal laser. It definitely has a good effect. And like I showed you in that patient of multifocal CSC, we manage with focal laser. Medical therapy has also been talked about. Eplerenone is a mineralocorticoid antagonist having lesser side effects. Generally start with about 25 to 50 milligram. In some cases, we can go even higher if the patient has a higher body weight. But do keep a check on potassium level, and ask the patient that if he reports symptoms of weakness, then probably you need to stop this therapy. So again, whether it is effective or not, it's controversial. There was a recent study in Lancet which definitely said stop using eplerenone. It is as good as a placebo, but I would still say it has effect, and I still use it in chronic CSC. And I've seen cases resolve on it, and you stop it, and they come back with fluid. You start it again, they again resolve. So you might have to give it for a long term. You might have to give it 6 months and continue maybe even longer than that. Whether you should give it in acute CSC is controversial, but some patients who really want therapy are also keen on having it resolved. I have tried it in acute cases also, but I again cannot comment whether eplerenone helped or it was just the natural history of the disease which helped. We will also have tried ATT, Diamox, Dorzox, NSAIDs, but I would say no definite role. If you at all want to give something other than eplerenone, avoid rifampicin in our country because of the tuberculosis issue, resistance issue. Even rather use ketoconazole or mifepristone. I have personally used ketoconazole, not mifepristone. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we'll take the questions later.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for the presentation, sir. And sir, the questions, sir, we'll be taking at the end of the session.